All right, hello. Welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel that focuses on shedding light on fairly difficult and obscure theories that are mostly theories of everything, uh, kind of alternative ways of looking at the world that nobody knows about. People who spent their whole life working on their magnum opus only to get it completely ignored. And in spite of coming out with some great findings. And today is video number 197 on the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. And Mr. Larson was an engineer who lived out west, northwest Portland mainly. I think he was born in North Dakota, but moved out there, went to school at Oregon State, and then settled in Portland, and worked as an engineer. But in his free time, he was trying to work on, making some more contributions to science, and he kind of got in, deeper than he thought that he would, discovering things that were even more revolutionary than what he was shooting for. But like a lot of people who get where history kind of requires them to step it up and really put themselves into a position where they have to sacrifice and have to make exert themselves, be their best version of themselves. Mr. Larson was able to answer the call and spent 30, really 60 years of his life on this, and about 30 of them developing the theory until he was able to arrive at his fundamental postulates, primarily through a process of induction, and then switch that around once he arrived at his fundamental postulates, and then through a process of deduction, uh, deduced a universe, a theoretical universe that he compared with the actual universe that the scientists had measured and observed, and to discover that they were very much compatible. So not only did he figure out how, the same universe that the legacy science had come up with, but he figured out why it was like that. In many cases, the legacy scientists, they have the measurements, they have the numbers, they have the equations, but they don't know what they mean. Larson put the whole thing together and showed what it all means, where it all comes from, the reasons why these equations work, and so on. The basic idea behind Larson's system, the reciprocal system, is that we live in a universe of motion. Not a universe of matter, not a universe of energy, but a universe of motion. Motion, for Larson, was the relationship between space and time. That sets up a generalized reciprocal relationship between space and time where they are fundamentally identical, except that they are inverted, meaning one is the inversion of the other, and they are basically components of a fraction where time or space is the numerator and space or time is the denominator. And they have identical characteristics. First is they don't really exist. They only exist together in motion. So there is no such thing as space just by itself or time just by itself, although you can use that as kind of like an abstraction. But fundamentally, there is only motion, and motion is the relationship between space and time. Larson used this analogy of the box. If you have a box, then you automatically have an inside of the box and an outside of the box, and the box itself. The box itself is the motion. The inside of the box is time, and the outside of the box is space. Also, space and time have three dimensions, or three or more dimensions, what Larson refers to as coordinate space and coordinate time. We generally recognize the coordinate space part, but the coordinate time part is not recognized by science. Then we also have what Larson calls clock space and clock time. And we generally recognize the clock aspect of time. Time is always getting later and later and later and later. But there's also the clock aspect of space. Space is getting farther and farther and farther apart. And you envision that using a balloon with a magic marker. You put some dots on the balloon. If you blew up the balloon, all of the dots are moving away from each other, but in no particular direction, or really in all directions. And that is what is called a scalar motion. So this clock is a one-dimensional scalar motion, and it is property of both time and space, although we generally only recognize it to be a property of time. Then time and space both come in discrete units. There's a minimum unit of time and a minimum unit of space. They're not continuous. They come in chunks. The chunks are very small and hard to detect, but they're one unit of space in one unit of time is the speed of light. So the speed of light is set up as really being the midpoint of the universe, or the null point, the origin, or even the ether, or at least one of the ethers of this universe. And that differs from what Einstein posits, where he says that the speed of light is the maximum speed of the universe. That's because Einstein didn't know of two halves of the universe. He was stuck over on what Larson calls the material sector half, where all motion is less than the speed of light. That is the sector, or the half of the universe that the scientists have measured and observed. The half of the universe where we have coordinate space and clock time joined together. But Larson says that there is also a second half of the universe that he calls the cosmic sector, where the speed of light is the minimum speed of the universe. Everything is moving faster than the speed of light. And in that sector of the universe, we have coordinate time, three-dimensional time, and clock space. Space is always getting farther and farther apart. And legacy science doesn't know anything about that part of the universe, but the beauty of it is that because of the reciprocal postulate, or the reciprocal system in general, what we know about the material sector can be extrapolated to the cosmic sector. All we have to do is invert the roles of space and time. So if something is a relationship between time, a time over space over time relationship in the material sector, it will be exactly the same in the cosmic sector, except it will be time over space. So that creates great power in the reciprocal system to extrapolate into unknown regions. Okay, now we are looking at his 1979 book here called Nothing But Motion, and we are in chapter 14 here, which is called Cosmic Elements. So a cosmic element is, just like it says, is an element of the like an element in the periodic table, like oxygen or nitrogen or carbon or helium or hydrogen. And we understand, how those things work in the material sector, or at least we understand the equations and the periodic table. But you have to invert the roles of space and time, and then you get cosmic elements. And so Larson is going over kind of the differences there, And there are differences, even though there is a reciprocal relationship, so you just invert. There's also an observational relationship because we reside and observe from the material sector. So when we're trying to observe things in the cosmic sector, there are certain limitations that we have, and there are certain perspectives that we have to take into account. Like, so for example, when we see something in the cosmic sector, when we see a body, say a cosmic body in the cosmic sector, we generally only see it one atom at a time. We also are there's something that's lost in the translation. That's what Larson calls the interregional ratio. So when you're looking across a boundary, you lose something in the translation. It's kind of like if you're looking at the sun, you only see the surface of the sun. You do not see the interior of the sun. You have to account for that you're not seeing the whole thing. You're just seeing the surface of it. Okay, we're going to take over right here, and hopefully this will also kind of explain some of the things that we were just talking about. Detection of the anti-neutron has also been reported, but the evidence for this is indirect, and it is rather difficult to reconcile the various ideas as to just what an anti-neutron would be, with the concept of charge reversal as the essential difference between particle and antiparticle. On the basis of the charge reversal hypothesis, the neutral particles should have no anti-forms. Indeed, those who contend that every particle has its antiparticle justify this statement by asserting that each neutral particle is its own antiparticle. This would rule out the existence of a distinct antineutron in the currently accepted sense of the term. In any event, this problem with respect to the neutral particles is another item that, like the lack of annihilation in the annihilation reactions, emphasizes the inadequacy of the conventional theory of atomic structure in application to the antimatter phenomenon. In a universe of motion, the atom is not an electrical structure. As has been brought out in detail in the earlier pages, it is a combination of rotational and vibrational motions. In the structures of the material type, the speed of the rotational motions is less than unity, less than the speed of light, while the speed of the vibrational motion is greater than unity, greater than the speed of light. In the structures of the cosmic type, these relations are reversed. Here, the speed of the vibrational motion is less than unity, and the speed of the rotational motion is greater than unity. The true antiparticle of a material particle or atom is a combination of motions in which the positive rotational displacements and negative vibrational displacements of the material structure are replaced by negative rotational displacements and positive vibrational displacements of equal magnitude. In one of the reactions currently attributed to mutual annihilation of antiparticles, the neutralization of displacements is actually accomplished. And in this case, the combination of electrons and positrons, the particles are actually annihilated. That is, they are converted to radiant energy, and their existence as particles of the rotational class is terminated. But there are, in reality, two different processes involved in this reaction. First, the oppositely directed charges cancel each other, leaving both particles in the uncharged condition. Subsequently, their rotations, M001 and M00-1, combine to 000, or 0-0-0, which is no effective rotation at all. In the vernacular, we might describe this second process as straightening out the rotational motion. There is a short interval between the two processes, and the effects attributed to positronium, a hypothetical short-lived combination of an electron and positron, probably originate during this interval. The extent to which annihilation can actually take place in contacts between antiparticles other than the electron and positron is still an open question. If the observed antiproton is actually the true antiparticle of the proton, that is, a cosmic proton, the results of the observed contacts of these particles indicate rather definitely that annihilation is confined to the one-dimensional particles. If the observed antiproton is merely a material proton with a negative charge, a possibility that cannot be ruled out at the present stage of the investigation, the observed results of the interaction are not relevant to the question, but the situation is still unfavorable for annihilation, as the obstacles in the way of securing simultaneous contact between the corresponding motions obviously increase with the complexity of the rotational combination, and it is very doubtful if the necessary coincident contacts can be obtained in different dimensions. It therefore appears that the intriguing possibility of energy production by contact between matter and antimatter is not only ruled out as a large-scale process by the impossibility of concentrating antimatter in space, as previously indicated, but is also unlikely even as a single atom process. Inasmuch as our present objective is to examine those phenomena of the cosmic sector of the universe that are accessible to our observation, the observed antiparticles, which are products of high energy processes in the material sector, are pertinent only to the extent that they throw some light on the kind of behavior that can be expected from the cosmic objects that do enter our field of observation. As indicated earlier, some of these incoming objects make themselves known as a result of chance encounters during our progress through three-dimensional time. Additionally, there are processes to be described later which result in the ejection of substantial quantities of matter from each sector into the other. The portion of the material sector within our observational range is therefore subject to a continual inflow of cosmic matter. The incoming particles of this matter can be identified as the cosmic rays. Okay, just a little background. So, this material sector and the cosmic sector are both basically in play for us at the same time. We are more or less moving through the cosmic sector, but we see it only fleetingly, in the same way that if we're moving through three-dimensional space, we only see a small amount of that space as we move through it. While we're moving through three-dimensional time, we only see a small amount of the cosmic sector as we move through it. But we are basically the material and cosmic sectors basically interpenetrate one another. As they appear to observation, the cosmic rays are particles entering the local frame of reference from all directions and at extremely high speeds, together with a variety of secondary particles produced in events initiated by the primary particles. The secondaries include some common subatomic particles of the material system, such as electrons and neutrinos, and also a number of transient particles of extremely short lifetime, from 10 to the minus 6 seconds downward, that were unknown prior to the discovery of the cosmic rays, but have since been produced by high energy processes in the particle accelerators. In current thought, the primaries are regarded as ordinary material atoms. The evidence in favor of this conclusion may be summarized as follows. 1. Subatomic particles are excluded, as they are incapable, for one reason or another, of producing the observed effects. This means that, unless they belong to an otherwise unknown class of particle, the primary cosmic rays must be atoms. 2. The masses of the atoms that constitute the primaries cannot be determined at the present stage of instrumentation and techniques, but it is possible to determine the charges on the individual particles and on the assumption that they are fully ionized. This indicates the atomic numbers. The distribution of the elements in the incoming cosmic rays on this basis approximates the estimated distribution in the observed universe as a whole. In the absence of any known alternative, this amount of evidence has been sufficient to secure general acceptance of the conclusion that the primaries are atoms of ordinary material elements. When the issue as to its validity is raised, however, as it must be when an alternative appears, it is clear that there are many counterindications of the empirical data. The most serious items are the following. Okay, now he gives a long list here, 4 different items of contradictions. We're going to just go through the first one, and then we will resume tomorrow and probably go over the first one again and then go through the others. The first one, the speeds and energies of the primaries are too high to be compatible with production by ordinary physical processes. No known process or even a plausible speculative process based on conventional physics is capable of producing energies that extend up to the vicinity of 10 to the 20th electron volts. As expressed in the Encyclopedia Britannica, quote, how to explain the acquisition of such energies is a disturbing physical and cosmological problem. Okay, that is the first of 4 reasons why the counterindications of the empirical data of, saying that the primaries are material atoms. Okay, we'll leave it there and take over tomorrow. Have a great day.